We are now into about the halfway point of the fantasy football season, and I'm sure you guys have been dealing with a lot of injuries, as have I. So let's break down 10 players that can make your bad fantasy football teams better or your already good fantasy football teams better. These are going to be my top 10 waiver ads for week 7 of fantasy football. So we are going to get right into this. We are not going to waste any time. If you guys are wondering why these players did not make this list, these guys are rostered in over 40 to 50% of Yahoo, Sleeper, and ESPN leagues combined. But make sure that Jackson Smith-Njigba, Rashee Rice, Roshan Johnson, Tajay Spears, Justice Hill, Chuba Hubbard, and both Chargers wide receivers Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnston are rostered in your league. If you have any questions specific to those players, leave them down below in the comments. I would say, generally speaking, most of those guys would be top 5 ads for me on the week if they were available, but definitely make sure that they are not in your respective leagues. So let's get into the number 10 ad of the week, which is Devin Singletary. This past week, he had 14 opportunities to Dameon Pierce's 13. So a weird, split where we saw him out-snap and out-touch Dameon Pierce for the first time all season. I'm not sure if this trend will continue, but I think he's worth a speculative ad at the end of your bench if you guys are holding somebody with no upside like, Robert Woods or Devontae Parker or something like that, and you want to do a $0 fab bid on somebody that could have some upside. I think Devin Singletary is that guy this week. So number 9 on this list is Keaontay Ingram, rostered right now in 23% of leagues. There's a good chance that this backfield in Arizona will be split until James Conner comes back, but I will say there is a glimmer of hope for Keaontay Ingram because this past week we saw Amari DiMercado, Keaontay Ingram, and even a little bit of Damian Williams, completely a 3-way timeshare. But the glimmer of hope that I'm talking about here is that Ingram was coming off of a multi-week neck injury. Maybe he's the true backup here to James Conner, and this game was a ramp-up period for Keaontay Ingram. So even though he only played, 38% of the snaps or whatever it was, got 37% of the carries, maybe because it was his first game back, he was being eased in, and maybe we see him closer to 50-60% of the opportunities this coming week. Not excited about Keaontay Ingram, but if you need some running back depth, he could definitely be a decent option. Staying on the Arizona Cardinals, let's get to number 8 on the list, which is Michael Wilson, a wide receiver of the Cardinals. I'm not convinced that he's like a special talent by any means, and I think he could be just like another like Alec Pierce type of guy who's playing on the field all the time, but he's nothing special and he's not going to be a huge fantasy producer. But for a rookie, he has shown a couple decent peripherals so far. A 71.1 receiving grade is 40th in the NFL right now, 60 or more receiving yards in 3 of his last 4 games, 1.83 yards per route run, also a decent number there as well. He's worth a stash, especially with Kyler Murray potentially opening up his practice window to return this coming week, if not next week. So he should be back in a couple of games, and that could be big for Michael Wilson and the Cardinals offense. So make sure you stash him away if you guys got some open bench spots. He's a good stash, especially if you had like Jonathan Mingo or something. You can drop him for Michael Wilson right now. So number 7 on this list is Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt had a big spike in his usage this past week, and he's definitely been better this year than he was last year. His PFF rushing grade is up about 7 points into the mid-70s, where it's kind of been most of his career outside of his breakout season. And Jerome Ford, I'm not convinced is a great player, so it really wouldn't shock me if Kareem Hunt won out this job here, but I'm also not convinced that Kareem Hunt is a great player either. So speculative add Kareem Hunt. If he's going to cost a lot of fab bucks because, he's a big name and he's been an elite RB1 in the past, then I'd probably let your league mates pick him up. But I do think if you can get him for 0 to 5% of your fab budget, Kareem Hunt is worth a speculative add there. Number 6 on this list is Wan'Dale Robinson, who's rostered right now in 18% of leagues. 8 targets this past week. His target share since he's been back fully in that San Francisco game on Thursday night in week 3, he didn't have a whole lot of snaps in that game, so I'm excluding that one. But since he's been back, other than that game, 20% target share, 21% target share, and 27% target share this past week in the 3 games since he's been back. He also crossed 70% of the routes for the first time this week. He took all 100% of the snaps from 11 personnel as the main slot receiver, and even some in other personnel groupings as well. In my opinion, this is the best wide receiver on the New York Giants, and with Saquon Barkley back into the fold in this offense, they're going to be semi-functional, and maybe they can actually put up some points here and there. Daniel Jones, it looks like will be out for another couple of games, but even with Tyrod Taylor, I like Wan'Dale Robinson as a decent, like, low-end flex play going forward. Now let's get into the top 5 here. Number 5 on this list, we have Michael Mayer, tight end of the Las Vegas Raiders. In case you guys were not following us during the Dynasty offseason, Michael Mayer was my highest graded tight end in the class. I thought he was the best tight end prospect in the class. In fact, he's the second highest tight end prospect I've ever graded going back to 2020. He was a force for multiple years at Notre Dame, even keeping a second-round pick and a productive NFL tight end, Cole Kmet, off of the field. And people wrote this guy off despite those impressive feats of multiple years of production, 30+% target share as a true junior, early declare. All the stuff was going in Michael Mayer's favor. The reason that people started to write him off was that he was only a 70th percentile relative athletic score athlete, where most of the tight ends in this class, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Luke Musgrave, Darnell Washington, a lot of these guys were freaks of nature, right? They were all really good athletes, and obviously we're seeing that play out with Sam Laporta, but Michael Mayer had the best production profile, bar none, in this class, and was also a pretty decent athlete, especially when you watched him on film. He went early in the second round in the NFL draft, and now we're starting to see a lot of encouraging signs from Michael Mayer. 81% of the snaps this past week, 66% of the routes for the Las Vegas Raiders. He saw 6 targets. He was the tight end 5 on the week. 61 of his 114 yards in the past 2 games have come after contact. So he's breaking tackles. He's making some things happen after the catch. 2.0 yards per route run in back-to-back games. Second highest single game PFF receiving grade of any tight end this season with 5+ targets. And only Mark Andrews has posted a better game than the one that we just saw from Michael Mayer. So I do think he is one of the best ads this week, especially if you guys are in need of a tight end. I could make the argument that he's actually the best ad overall if you guys are dealing with tight end injuries, or maybe you have a bye week, or maybe you're just unhappy with your current tight end and you're trying to get some better upside. Definitely prioritize Michael Mayer. I'd be willing to spend 10, 15, 20, 25% if I was really desperate for a tight end right now. So number 4 on this list is Josh Downs, a guy that I seemingly talk about every single week, so I'll keep this brief, but he has 28 targets in his last 4 games. He found the end zone for the first time all season this past week, and the Colts offense, I know it's looked a little bit rough without Anthony Richardson, and they do have a tough schedule coming up, but Josh Downs is the easy target to hit in this offense. Against Cleveland in week 7, they're probably going to struggle yet again, but I do think that Josh Downs is going to be a viable flex play going forward, and I'd be willing to spend 10 to 20% of my fab on him. So now let's get into the top 3 guys, and I think these 3 guys specifically will be a big-time discussion point. I will say that I feel confident that one or a couple of these guys will end up pretty solid as a waiver ad this week, which is why I think generally this is a pretty good week for waivers. I'm just not sure which one of these guys is going to flop and which one of these guys is going to hit. My number 3 waiver ad on the week is Craig Reynolds, who's right now widely available, 3% rostered. David Montgomery has already been listed as doubtful for week 7, so we probably are going to have him out for a game, maybe 2. They do have a bye in week 9, so it would make sense if he's out the next 2 games. From what I've seen from fantasy doctors, they also think that Jahmyr Gibbs might be out for another game or might be out for another couple games because of the bye in week 9. But it is possible that Jahmyr Gibbs is back on the field for this game, especially without David Montgomery. Maybe the Lions coaching staff wants to get him back out there. I think in either case, Craig Reynolds getting the David Montgomery role, whether Gibbs is on the field or not, could make him a low-end RB2, high-end RB3. And then, of course, if Gibbs is out, he's probably a mid RB2 in my Week 7 rankings. If you guys lost David Montgomery, if you lost Devon A-Chain like I did, if you lost a couple other players in your flex or whatever, whoever you need for a 1 to 2 week fill-in, Craig Reynolds might actually be the best option on the entire waiver slate this week. Just the top 2 ads that I'm going to talk about in a second have a lot more upside than Craig Reynolds. You guys can see on the screen this quote from Dan Campbell. He thinks that, Jahmyr Gibbs is working his way back. Apparently, he's been running really well, but like I said, even if Jahmyr Gibbs is back, he was out for multiple weeks with a hamstring pull. I do think that Craig Reynolds will get, I would say, the bulk of the work, if not most of the red zone work, like we know Jahmyr Gibbs hasn't really seen, even when David Montgomery was out of the lineup. So I really do like Craig Reynolds as a low-end RB2 flex play this week, regardless of what happens with Jahmyr Gibbs. So number 2 on this list, my number 2 waiver ad of the week is Zach Evans, running back of the Los Angeles Rams. Right now, widely available, 2% rostered. I'd be willing to spend 20, 30, 40% of my fab on this guy, given the scarcity of the running backs available on the waiver wire and the amount of injuries that we've seen this past week. I'm sure a lot of you guys could use a flex fill-in or whatever. So some background on Zach Evans, just in case you guys have no idea who the hell this guy is. If you weren't following during the Dynasty offseason, he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He goes to TCU, has a great freshman freshman season in college, and then he transfers away to Ole Miss. Had a solid college football career, but he was outshined last college football season by freshman Quinshon Judkins, who's actually been, not that great this year. But because he was such a Devi darling, because he had a great freshman season at TCU, everybody was enamored with Zach Evans come the dynasty offseason. I saw a lot of people say, Zach Evans was better than Jahmyr Gibbs, or Zach Evans was RB3 in the class ahead of Zach Charbonnet, or whatever. Zach Evans had like a cult following in the dynasty offseason, so a lot of you guys that play dynasty, I'm sure, know all about Zach Evans. For me, I saw a lot of issues with this guy on tape. He's not a refined third down option, not good in protection, not a good receiver. He had some issues with vision and like rushing instincts. What he is, though, is a good athlete. He's a one cut and go physical runner who can play in Sean McVay's offense. So I do think this offense is actually a good schematic fit for Zach Evans. My expectation is that he's going to play a lot on early downs with Kyren Williams dealing with an injury. He's basically been ruled out already. Ronnie Rivers was put on IR, so he's going to be out for a while. This is the opportunity that Zach Evans needed. And you guys can see this quote from an ESPN article. Basically what Sean McVay said, they're still working through the plan without, Kyren Williams and Ronnie Rivers. I'm sure there's probably some interest in like Leonard Fournette, who's a free agent right now. But he did say that Zach Evans got the first carries. He said they have Royce Freeman on their practice squad. So I think my expectation right now for this backfield is that Zach Evans will get the early down work, Royce Freeman will get the third down work, and we're going to have like a 60-40 or a 50-50 type of split. And if you guys need a flex option this week because you have a lot of injuries, so definitely go out and spend some fab on Zach Evans. I think he's a worthwhile risk to take. Although I didn't think he was the greatest prospect in the world, he definitely has some redeeming qualities, and I honestly think he's a better player than Kyren Williams, who's just gotten fed a huge workload, and it doesn't seem like Sean McVay really cares who the running back is. He's just going to give him a big workload, and if Zach Evans walks into that workload, we might have something really good on our hands in the next coming weeks. So my number one pickup of the week is Elijah Mitchell / Jordan Mason. So there's a lot to go through when it comes to these two guys. Elijah Mitchell has been inactive 2 previous games before this week. He was coming off of a knee injury. He was the primary backup prior to that injury, right? And coming into the season, if we asked the question, who is Christian McCaffrey's handcuff, we would have said it was Elijah Mitchell. In his first game back this past week, we saw him prior to the Christian McCaffrey injury play 5 snaps to Jordan Mason's 2. But then when Christian McCaffrey went down, Jordan Mason played 15 snaps after the injury compared to Elijah Mitchell's 2 snaps after the injury. Mason ran 5 times for 27 yards and a touchdown, while Elijah Mitchell lost 3 yards on his 2 carries. So as of right now, Jordan Mason is the healthier one. He's the better player, at least as it currently stands. He's actually recorded a 92.5 PFF grade over the last 2 seasons prior to this game, which is actually second best among all running backs. So Jordan Mason is the higher upside option by all accounts. 49ers clearly do value Elijah Mitchell, though, because his playing time over the first 3 quarters when Christian McCaffrey was out there speaks volumes. And Kyle Shanahan was basically asked about this backfield situation. And what Kyle Shanahan said was, and I quote, Elijah has earned a ton with us over the years. I think Elijah, when he's healthy, has been as good of a back as there is. He's just had a hard time staying healthy. He said, hopefully Christian McCaffrey will be good to go this week. He added, but if not, we have a group of backs we can rely on. So what that tells me is that if Elijah Mitchell is healthy and Christian McCaffrey is not, he is going to get the first crack at this job. But I do think both of these guys are high upside options to go out and pick up, because Christian McCaffrey is an older running back. He's dealing with injuries now. Not a guy that I really wanted to draft for this reason, but it is making me excited about these handcuffs. I don't know for sure if Christian McCaffrey is going to be out this week, which is why I said if you guys need a 1-week starter, Craig Reynolds and Zach Evans maybe make some more sense. But I do think that Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell are the highest upside waiver pickups to stash at the end of your bench if you guys are not in need of a great option. And I'm sure if you guys are watching this video, you're probably in a pretty good situation. Maybe you're 6-0, you're 5-1, you're 4-2, something like that. The 49ers running backs present the highest overall ceiling, because if one of them wins out this job, then we could have a guy that's, a pretty good fill-in for the next couple of weeks if Christian McCaffrey's dealing with injury, or if McCaffrey re-aggravates it, maybe they're a league winner down the stretch of the season. So those are my top pickups of Week 7 fantasy football. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, if you got some value from it, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. Make sure to check out our sponsors, Underdog Fantasy, get involved in some pick'em contests, get involved in some DFS drafts and all the good stuff that that they got going on over there. When you sign up, use the promo code FSE for 100% back up to $500 for a limited time. And also, if you guys want access to our rest of season rankings to help you with trades, if you want access to our weekly rankings to help you with start-sit decisions, our dynasty rankings, if you guys are playing dynasty right now, then go on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE over there as well. You'll get 30% off any of the packages, 6 months for free if you sign up annually, and also a free Zoom consultation with one of us if you guys sign up annually over there as well. So with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.